So for the sum if functions, what you usually do is you put an equal sign and just sum if, and just start with the bracket. And as you can see at the bottom, the Excel is just so nice because it really shows you all the arguments that you need in a function. So in this case, you would need 3 arguments: range, criteria, and sum range. And range and criteria are both required when it comes to sum if, but sum range is actually optional. And you guys will see an example of that soon. So for range, like I said before, it's required, and the range of cell is usually if you need. So the range is the cells that you want evaluated by the criteria. So, and usually cells in each range must be like numbers, names, arrays, or just any references that really contain numbers. And for criteria, it's in the form of a number or expression, and we're most likely going to use those two. And anything else would be like cell references or text. And yeah, we'll also use text too. And you guys can see an example of that real quick. And sum range is actually it's the actual cells to add. So if you want to add cells other than those specified in the range argument, then yeah. And there are some cases where sum range will be omitted, like I said before, since it's optional. And usually then the Excel adds the cells that are specified in the range argument, and you guys will also see that. So let's think of a scenario. Let's say you want to know the sum sales for the vegetables category. So for the sum if, it will be equals sum if, and then the range will be, like I said, you want the range of cells that you want to evaluate by criteria. So in this case, it will be from C7 to C11. And then the criteria will be, since you want the sum of sales for the vegetable category, you put quotation marks in vegetables. And the reason why you put quotation marks is because when you use quotes, you need to use them to signify text and formulas. And in this case, it's not a numeric syntax. So like you would need to use quotations since it's text. And for sum range, this will be values from E7 to E11, and it should come up to 12K. And let's see if that's right, because since we said we want to know the sum for vegetables, you have to add, it would have added 2.3K, 5.5K, and 4.2K, and that does come out to be 12K. So let's think of another scenario where we don't use a sum range. So in this case, like I said, the range, Excel, it will be specified in the range argument. So the things that we want to specify are actually still the numbers, since we're using sum if. So in this case, it would be, do you guys have any idea what the range will be in this case? So like so the scenario would be, I want to add all the sales that are less than 2,000. What would be the range in this scenario? The range will be from E7 to E11, because those are the ranges that you're actually, since we're not using a sum range and we're only using the criteria of, we're going to be using expression criteria. So then what you need to look are the actual numbers while looking at the range. So that's why you have to use from E7 to E11. And then since I said the scenario will be looking for numbers, sales that are less than 2,000. So in this case, you have to do quotation marks and then less than, and then just 2,000 like that. And then actually let's do greater than 2,000. Then it should come out to be same number as last time, 12K. Yeah. And now we're going to be talking about the average if functions. So the average if functions are much like the sum if functions, since it allows you to take an average based on one or more criteria. The arguments are the same as a sum if, so it will be range, criteria, and the average range. So let's look at an example. So the range in this case for an average if are the range of cells that you want to apply that criteria against. And the criteria is what you be is determine which cells to average, and average range in this case is also optional. So the range of cells to average together, and if you're not using it, the range parameter will be average instead. So let's think of a scenario. So this case is also equal sign, average if, parentheses, and it shows you all the arguments again. And like I said before, that's why Excel is so useful. It's so easy to use since it shows you all the arguments. For this case, let's say we want to know the average of sales between the fruit values, the fruit categories, right? So the range that we will look at, do you guys have any idea what to add for range and criteria? If not, that is fine too. Okay, so the range would be from C7 to C11, since these are the cells that you want to apply the criteria against. And then the criteria itself will be quotation marks, fruits, since these are the cells to average, the ones that are labeled as fruits. And then the average range that you will input is, since it will be from E7 to E11, since these are the cells to average together. And that should come out to be 1,000, because the average between 1,200 and 800 is 1,000. And yep. So yeah, that is pretty much it for sum ifs and average if functions. And now Rebecca is going to take over from here real quick. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen.
Okay, sharing my screen. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is the equation concatenate. Okay, so this equation is one of the easiest to learn, but one of the most powerful formulas. So you're basically allowed to combine text, numbers, dates, and more from multiple cells into one. So let's try it out here. And it's really simple. You just select whatever cells you want to combine. So let's say we want to combine Alec and plant. Oh, sure. And now we get Alec plant. Very simple. That's basically it. And the next one we have is if error. And if error is something that any analyst who actively presents data should take advantage of. So what this formula basically does is that whenever you get an error, like a pound value error, it just makes it a 0 instead of saying like pound value, because even though it's harmless, it is distracting. And if we write it here, let's say we wanted to divide E3 by E9, and if there is an error, then it would present itself as a 0. So we see that these values can actually be divided together, so it doesn't matter. However, if we tried let's say E11 divided by E12. We see that we get a 0 because you can't divide an empty cell by a 0. And that's basically it on the equations. Next, we can move on to the if function. The if function is one of the most popular functions in Excel, and it allows you to make logical comparisons between a value and what you expect. So an if statement can have two results. The first result is if your comparison is true, and the second is if your comparison is false. So notice here that we have column G, and there's no or yeses. So we could try this. If G3 is equal to yes, then you want it to come out as 1, and if it's not yes, then you want it to come out as false, which could be 2. And we see that it's 2 because G3 is no. The next function we could look at is VLOOKUP. So you use VLOOKUP when you need to find things in a table or arranged by row. For example, you could look up a price of an auto part by the part number, or find an employee name based on their employee ID. And in this case, we'll try to see, let's say for 1101, okay, for 1102, we want to find the total price. So you look up, you type VLOOKUP and 1102 from A12 to G12, A to the G12, and that's your table array. And your column index number is basically which column you want to look at. So since we're looking at the total, we're going to choose 4 and false. We want to choose false for the exact match, not the approximate match. And we see that we get 14, which is right here. We could try with some other columns too. So let's say we want to find the quantity, it would just be 5, and 0 is the quantity. And let's say we wanted the first name, just column 2, and it's John. And that's basically it for VLOOKUP. It's pretty simple. And the next thing we'll move on to is sorting data. So when you're sorting data, it's important to first decide if you want the sort to apply to the entire worksheet or just a cell range. Sort sheet organizes all the data in your worksheet by one column, and related information across each row is kept together when the sort is applied. Sort range sorts the data in a range of cells, which could be helpful when working with a sheet that contains several tables. And sorting a range will not affect the other content on the worksheet. So we'll try sort sheet first, okay? And let's say we wanted to sort by the name, okay? So we just select the cell in the column we want to sort by. In this case, we'll just try C2, okay? And then go to, oh, this is in the way. Yeah, go to the data column, I'm already here. And you want to click the A to Z command, it's right here. And it's already sorted. And so the whole worksheet is now just sorted by the alphabetical order of the name. And then moving on to sort range, you want to select the cell range that you want to sort. So this is kind of a big data set, but we will select from A2 to right here. And you select the sort command right here, And let's say we wanted to sort by birth year, and we'll try smallest to largest. Okay, and now everything is sorted by the birth year, or just like who was like the oldest, I guess. And that's basically it. It's really simple, but it makes your spreadsheet a lot nicer to look at or easier to look at. And so that's it for me. And Joe will be taking over now. So I will stop sharing my screen.
Okay. Yeah, so now we're going to be looking how to filter a range. So in this case, you first got to filter your data. So on your data sheet, you can literally press any of the cells. And then all you have to do is go to data right here on the top. And then you just click filter. And then once you click filter, wait. Sorry about that. Okay, so now your data table is filtered, and you see on the top row, you see all these sort of drop down buttons that you on the top right. So what you do is you click that, you click the column header arrow, and then you see all these options. But then since we're going to be filtering a range, for Mac at least, you're going to choose this button right here. It says choose one. And then in this case, we're gonna select the between comparison. So yeah, you're gonna press between, and between comparisons is to look at any of the values between a certain number. So in this case, let's say we want to look at for year, we want to look at the values in between 1950 to like 1970. Oh wait, did I click the wrong one? They clicked the wrong one. My bad on that. 1950 to like 1975. So yeah, once you do that, you can see all the data values, all the data sets in between the years 1950 to 1975. So that's just one of the examples you can use when filtering a range. And now we're going to be filtering just table in general. And you see it's like the same thing. So, oh, by the way, when you want to undo your thing, you have to press the top right and then just click clear filter and you get your entire sheet back. So yeah, for filtering a table, let's say you want to unselect some of like, okay, I'll show you an example. So let's say you want to filter by country and you click the top right. And then let's say you want just like a few of the countries listed in on this list. So what you would do is just select all, and let's say you want China, or Philippines, and yeah, then you'll be able to see all this this data sheet with just specific countries that you want. And there are a lot more options that you can do as well. Like obviously it's not like you can just do it in a country. You can also do it by birth year, just anything in general. But yeah, there are also like other useful tools that you can see. Let's say for year, you want to go by like descending order. The thing you have to do is just click descending and it shows from the year 2016 and all the way to the bottom, 1927. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for just basic filtering. And now we're gonna go over pivot tables. So for pivot tables, you want to select the cells you want to when creating a pivot table. So you just want to highlight your entire data sheet. And then you want to go to insert and then what? Pivot tables actually not here for some reason. Table, okay. I guess it's just different. I guess it was different than yesterday, but yeah, so you will have to click pivot tables. And then usually if you highlight the entire your data sheet, you will have to put the range in. But so that's why it's easier to put the range. But then if let's say the data table is too big, then to put the range, you have to individually put these dollar signs. And yeah, but in this case, it's easier to see the pivot table in a new worksheet. So you're going to press new worksheet and you're going to press OK. And let's just name the sheet pivot table. Yeah, so on the right, you see the pivot table fields and you see all these different sections right here. So what you do is you drag them into whether you want them as filters, columns, rows, or just values. So let's say you want to look at the number of titles for each honor, then you would drag honor into rows and honor into also the values to see the count of honors. Then you will see how many the number of honors each of the labels had. So for the man of the year, there was 56. So it's just a simple way to just summarize large amounts of data. Let's look at a different example. Let's say you want to look at the number of honors for each person. So you have to see for columns, you will have the honor, and then for rows, you will have the name. And for values, you have the count of honor. But you see there's just way too many people, right? So what you would do is you want to filter, let's say by country. So it makes it easier. And you want countries same thing as last time, you will unselect everything. And then let's say you just want France and China. And there you go. You can see the people from France and China and what they had, what kind of honors they were able to obtain, and the grand total. So yeah, as I said before, it's just pivot tables are just a simple way to summarize large amounts of data. And when you have a bigger data table than the example that we have provided right here, you really want to use this function to quickly analyze just any numerical data. And now we're going to be going over charts and graphs, which is our last thing that we're going to go over. And let's use this data table right here. We're going to first make a pie chart because it's a lot easier to make. This data table is really easy to make a pie chart. So what you want to do is for pie chart, you want to have, I want the category and the sales, right? So what you do is you will have to highlight these two sections to group of cells. And what you usually do is you would have to press command, because if you don't press command when highlighting a different section, let's see, I say I'm highlighting E6 to E11, and let's say I also want C6 and C11. So when I do highlight it without the command, then the part that I highlight for E6 to E11 is it's gone, right? So we have to do, so highlight this part and then commands and bam. So you have both of the columns that you want. And what you do is you go to insert, and they usually press recommended charts. But let's say you just want we're going to make the pie chart right now, but if we want some other charts, there are other options right here that you can see. But in this case, we're going to make a pie chart. So we're going to click pie chart. And let's say we just want percentages, everything more in detail. So we'll have to press one of the options and above. And let's say I just want this. And yeah, so this will be an example of a pie chart. But let's say you also want to make a linear, bar graph, but with a linear trend or something. Let's actually we can make a chart right now. We can say, let's go by day and put height in centimeters. So let's say there are 10 different days. Sorry, this is just like a random data table. Insert some numbers. Plants really don't, they don't usually don't grow fast. So I'm just gonna put them in decimals, decimal increments. Say 6.3. Let's say that didn't grow for another day. 8, 6.4, 6.7 or something. So yeah, for this case, you will highlight the entire data chart and then go to insert again, recommended charts. And let's say you want just like a scatter plot, right? Here's a scatter plot. And when it comes to charts and graphs, you can do more, there are more elements that you can add. And an example can be like a trend line. So what you usually do is you look at the top left right here and you click add chart element. And then in this case, let's say you want a trend line and you want like a linear forecast for the future, then there you go. So you can add any of the trend lines. And let's say you want like the chart title. Let's say you just don't want a chart title, right? Then you have to just click none. So there's just so many options that you can use just in Excel overall. And in this case, a chart is, a tool for you to communicate data graphically, and just charts allows your audience to see the meaning behind the numbers, and they make showing comparisons and just trending things a lot easier. So yeah, that's like crucial for like data visualization. So yeah, that's all we're gonna cover for Excel. Do you guys have any questions? If you do, you guys can drop it down in the chat. If not, that is fine too. I'm just gonna turn back on my camera.